Hello and welcome to Ladies Corner with Tea. Tonight is a very special show because we have an election candidate, this John West, to tell us about why she's running and why she's so passionate about serving this time around. Without much ado, I'd like to welcome Liz John West. Thank you very much for coming on to the show, ma'am. Thank you for what you do in our community, and thank you again for coming on to Ladies Corner.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
For those who do not know you, could we start by getting you to tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Mm-hmm. So, as my name is Liz John West, and raised in India, in a small village in South India. And my family, we immigrated in many years ago to Canada and landed in Kamloops, BC. And then the whole family kind of migrated to Alberta for us to do our university here, both Calgary and in Edmonton as well. And so my father, as you know, some of you who are might be immigrants, he started with $32. That at that time you could only bring $32 to Canada in his pocket, and began to do small businesses. He was an engineer back home, and so started building houses. And then my mom, who didn't speak English, went to ESL classes, and she did her healthcare aid, and then started working with people with disabilities as well as seniors, and loved working. And for myself, I graduated here from U of A in a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology, and went into the social services field. And I've been in this field for about 30 years now, from several different aspects, from homelessness to domestic violence to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And currently I'm overseeing numerous programs within the company that I work in, which works with families who are struggling as well as youth.
Your story resonates with a lot of people right now. When you say your mom barely spoke English, you are also from an immigrant background, and many of us look at you and we see ourselves in your story. May I ask, what informs your passion? How did your parents pass on this this service idea? Because to run for office means you want to serve the people, and 30 years you spent in Edmonton social services tells me your heart is that of a servant. Where did you get this from?
I would say for me, it really came from mom and dad. They both are people of faith, and I saw them getting involved in the church community. They also, as many of our immigrant experiences, they sent money back home for their siblings and cousins and their aunties and uncles and moms, because they were struggling themselves back home. And so over and over again, I saw mom and dad continually giving, not just in their faith community and not just also in their cultural community. I still have pictures of my mom after she gets a paycheck. Every single paycheck, she would put 10% into the drawer of the bedroom night table. And I still have that image of mom just saying, this is for others. God has given us this much, and this is for others. So that's kind of cool. And I would say that's where a lot of mine comes from.
Mm. And that's something, again, we all can relate to. So you're a very relatable candidate. When I look at Ward Métis, the constituency you're running in, there are 7 other candidates there. Can we start by saying what is the different experience you're bringing in that the rest of I don't want to say their opponents, because you're working towards the better good of Ward Métis. What do you bring that's different from the rest of them?
I would say there's several aspects that I would say that I'm different from other candidates. One is I have lived experience. I live in the ward, and I've lived in the ward for 30 years, including McCauley neighborhood as well. So I know the challenges that we face in our community. I've been involved in community work for numerous years. So it's not just the last year, it's been several years. We've raised our 3 children in the community as well. And not only lived experience, I also have professional experience with leadership and policy development and working with governments. And so I would say I bring to the table a numerous amount of experience that possibly the other candidates may not have.
May I ask, what formed your wanting to run in 2017? What did you see in Ward Métis that you thought you could jump in and help fix?
One of the main things is I found that the voice of our community wasn't represented well within City Council. That would be the biggest catalyst when I think of many of the issues that we have faced in our community, issues around infill housing, issues around homelessness, issues around the challenges of newcomers. And our neat thing about Ward Métis is that I would say we're like a microcosm of Edmonton. We have many established neighborhoods, generations of people, as well as we have many newcomers that come and live in our ward and then eventually move to other parts of Edmonton. And the ethnic as well as background is significant, from the French community to the Spanish community to the Somalian community, and so on. So, and I would say I could represent them fairly mindfully.
So if you won the election tomorrow and you were to start work on Monday, what would be your first 3 goals getting into office?
I would say the number 1 goal is the economic recovery from the pandemic. And I really pay attention to that this economic recovery will not leave anyone behind. So I will be paying attention to the people that are on the fringes. Many times it's women and children and people that others may not pay attention to. So that would be one of the big things that I would situate myself in those discussions and ensure that the policies is fair and equitable for everyone in Edmonton. The second piece, should I continue?
Oh, yes, please. Sorry.
Okay. The second piece would be really the homelessness issue that we've been facing for some time. This is not a new issue. Some of us have been working in this field for 30 years looking at homelessness, and I really want to look at not continuing to have Band-Aid solutions, but really concrete, sustainable solutions, which really means looking at permanent affordable housing, permanent supported housing. And the third one that I would really look at is the whole issue of racial inequalities that is existing right now, which again, the pandemic has really lifted within our society in the last year.
Thank you very much. If you're just joining us, this is Ladies Corner with Tea. We have a candidate for the Ward Métis with us, Liz John West, and she's taking questions on why she's running. Thank you again, Liz, for doing this. I want to face racial inequality, and there's been a lot of talk since last year with the death of George Floyd in the US coming here as well. Do you think we have overflogged this idea of racial inequality? Anybody listening to us may think, oh, not again. This is a victim's cry. Is this the right way to think about racial inequality or not?
I'm really of the mindset that we need to hear people's experiences. I may not relate to those experiences. However, we still need to pay attention. And the voices of the margins is where a lot of the racial inequality may happen. We need to hear that. We need to stop. We need to ponder. We need to reflect. And if people are saying, and if people are rising and saying that they are treated differently because of the color of their skin, because of their religion, because of their gender, whatever it is, we need to pay attention, and we need to ensure that this society that we live in, this city that we live in, is for everybody. Quality of life exists for everybody and not just for the few.
Yeah, but we've been arguing this for so long, and I'm just wondering, how hopeful are you that we'll ever get racial equality?
One of the ways to look at these issues, and I would definitely agree with you that we have been dealing with this for a long time, is about leadership. When you look at city council right now, 52% of Edmontonians are women, but city council is 2 women out of the 12. And also with regards to minorities or people of color or people that are not white, I believe the statistic is like 45% of Edmonton. I believe that is, and don't quote me on that. But however, do we have that type of leadership on city council? And so when you are put into places of leadership, if I was elected into council, I would bring my immigrant experience. I would bring my professional experience. I would bring my experience as a woman and my experience as a mother. And so, and then it will be in that lens that decisions will be made for myself. And it's important that when we make these decisions, that there's diversity around the table. I'm not saying all of us need to look like me when we're making it, but I am saying that people that look like me should be at the decision-making table. And I would say then you make robust and excellent choices and decisions.
I agree with you, and I was just, saying in my head, yes, go, go, Lees. It's the kind of conversation we have about this topic. Many times I've been to City Hall myself, and the coldness of it. Sometimes I think maybe because it's all white, and you're right that there's just all 2 women. We need more diversity. We do need more women that look like us. On your Twitter feed recently, you posted Black Lives Matter, Indigenous Life Matters. But what does that really mean?
I do sell these lawn signs that says Black Lives Matter and Indigenous Lives Matter. What it really means is we are aligning ourselves. I'm not Black. I'm from India. I'm not Indigenous. However, we as allies, we can come alongside individuals that are being marginalized in our community. And so these, when I say that Black Lives Matter, what I'm saying is the voice of the Black community matters. And it needs to go beyond just listening to the voice. It needs to go into places where policies can be influenced, where decisions can be made with those voices taken into consideration.
And we thank you for your advocacy on this. I think it's important that candidates like yourself highlight that all lives matter, Black lives, Indigenous life, and so on. Now, in light of elevating, this was from your Twitter feed. I was in this brilliant. I didn't make this up. It says elevating the experience of Black and Indigenous people. I'm just wondering, what should that look like when we say we're elevating the experience of Black and Indigenous people? Can that ever happen in Alberta today?
When I talk about elevating Black and Indigenous people, what I'm saying is let's pay attention. Let's listen. Let's stop, and let's not justify their responses. Let's really have a place where we're listening from heart to heart. That's what I mean by elevating it. Sometimes I find in these conversations, people are saying things, but we're ready to do a rebuttal. no, 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 that's not true. You interpret it a different way. And I'm saying, stop. Let's just listen to each other. Let's honor their experience and let's talk about it and let's problem solve together versus being dismissive about the experiences of Black and Indigenous people.
I agree with you. So when you want to problem solve homelessness, for example, or the lack of adequate housing, how do you go about that?
You know, it is a huge issue. And like I said earlier, I've been working with the homeless population that was my first job 30 years ago. And I would say that we need to go beyond shelters and we really need to look at how do we support men and women who are struggling with mental illness, who are struggling with addiction, and how does that look like within a housing complex? And there are numerous models out there. Like currently in Edmonton, we have a program that's called Ambrose Place, where they support individuals who are struggling with mental illness and addiction. It's a different way of doing housing. It's a very supported. And so when someone says to me that, oh, this is a hopeless case, it's not. It's the will of the government that really is the hopeless piece. That if we had government saying we need to take care of the people, that we don't want individuals living on the street, that we want to take care of them, yes, you put money into it, and yes, we can have solutions towards it.
Unemployment happens to be a severe problem in this city, as far as I know. And I've often heard when people talk about meaningless work, or they have to get 2-3 jobs just to have some semblance of a quality of life, or quality in their lifestyles. I'm just wondering how you intend to tackle this perceived hopelessness and amongst ethnic minorities. Work that is not meaningful, work that doesn't pay enough, and pretty much work that doesn't change the generational poverty that exists in many of the neighborhoods that are affected by homelessness and drug abuse.
Mm-hmm. And and it's interesting because many, again, when I think of my own mom's experience, kind of, and also my father's experience when he first immigrated, his civil engineering degree was not recognized in Canada, so he had to start from the bottom up. As in Canada, and that's the immigrant experience, which is really a tragedy, really, because Canada is not benefiting. They come into the country with all the point system, and then they're washing dishes or, driving the taxi or whatever it is, these lawyers and engineers and doctors and nurses. And I would say it's a complex issue that all 3 levels of government really need to look at. How, the growth of Canada is going to happen through immigration. That has been said numerous times. And my wonderment at that time is, well, how are we going to support? The federal government has to look at, do we begin to recognize the credentials that immigrants are coming to Canada with? And if so, how do we do that? And so it's and I know there's a lot of discussions happening on it, but I would agree with you that new Canadians coming to Canada, the poverty is significant. But there are, again, the will of the government. How do we really ensure that the voice of the immigrant is at that table where these decisions are being made?
My follow-up question to what you've just said is, out of curiosity, has things really changed from the time of your parents, in terms of, you just said your dad's civil engineering degree was just never recognized, even though later on he went into housing and then he owned a grocery store. Has that narrative changed that much? Has anything changed during that generation and now? What are your thoughts?
That's a really good question. You know, again, I'm really speaking to the converted here. The immigrants are hardworking. That still continues to this day. Has policies changed that allows a civil engineer to work in Canada versus having to start another business? I don't think so. I think what's consistent is that we as immigrants come to Canada, well, my parents come to Canada and work their butt off in building the nation. And so that is what has consistently been existing. The issues around identifying and recognizing credentials, that conversation has been around for years and years and years. I'm not sure however long that's going to continue, especially within the federal government.
Mm. We are going to keep advocating about that. I'd like to move on to your thoughts about the police. Again, I was reading through your Twitter feeds. You are passionate about the transparent police force. What key points are you running regards to more transparency from the Edmonton police?
You know, one of my biggest platforms is accountability. I guess I'm wondering who is holding the police department's feet to the fire. Whenever there's a complaint, it's the police themselves that look at these complaints. And so I'm really advocating for a more objective, civilian-led investigation process. And so currently we don't. Every single person that's investigating the complaints are police officers. And over again, we have seen that there's a perceived bias because many complaints come in, but none is convicted. And so that would be my biggest kind of accountability. And that's one of the platforms that I'm running on, is not just accountability for the police department, but accountability as leaders, that we are held accountable to the people that we are serving.
Okay, we're running out of time and I've got several questions. I'm going to have to leave the police, issue right there. Maybe another time we carry on from there. But I'd like to consider the fact that in 2017 you ran for this same office. And may I just ask before I go to the next question, how did you bring yourself back from dealing with that loss of not winning? How did you overcome that? Was it it must have been a big setback. Must have been a difficult one.
The people have spoken. And so I'm really about democracy. I'm really about the fact that the people determine who is on city council. I honor that process. It did definitely was reflective of me to relook at my campaign. As I said, it was a mom and pop campaign, and it was very much about a very naively run campaign. And so I learned from it. I didn't use it as a place of discouragement. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed meeting people. And so that was really a neat catalyst as I thought about running for 2021.
There are special orders, I believe, maybe you're experiencing now, maybe you experienced in 2017, orders that make it even difficult for women candidates to come forward. Do you want to talk about some of the challenges women candidates face or challenges you are facing, especially in light of the pandemic? What special things you put in, you have in mind as you go out campaigning, and the special orders you face and how you are overcoming them?
Mm-hmm. The biggest for me, being an older woman, is really because of the pandemic, a lot of the work is done on social media. And so that's a huge learning curve for me. And so we do have a social media team that really helps out with that, and really paying attention to being respectful of when knocking on doors. So that would be the challenge with regards to the pandemic. But as a woman, I would see some of the big challenges for me is politics historically is run by men. And I know culture very well because I come from a particular culture. So the politics runs by men, which is it has a certain nuances and cultural elements to it. So when a woman walks into that arena, we're not walking in knowing all the nuances of the culture of politics. And so that, I know for me, has been a barrier that I'm looking at and going, why would they do that? Or why are they talking to each other in such an aggressive manner? And so that those are being more confusing. Whereas when I come into it, I'm not going to be talking aggressively to people. I'm wanting to listen. I'm wanting to collaborate. I'm wanting to know. I'm wanting to hear. So those might be different skill set that a woman brings into the political arena compared to a man.
Oh, I see. We're going to take the last question right after this. Please don't go away. This is Ladies Corner with T. This is Ladies Corner with T, and we've had Ward Métis candidate Liz John West taking questions tonight in our election special with Liz John West. Before we let you go, I hope you'll come back to this show again, maybe over the summer at some point. I want to ask you to answer me this final question, and then to go on ahead to tell our audience what you'd like for them to do, where they can get more information, how we can support your campaign. And this is a question: why should anyone vote for you? Why should I vote for you? Why should our audience listening think about voting for you? For example, I want you to sell yourself. You got about 20 seconds to do that. And where do we go to get more information?
Okay. I would say why you would vote for me is I will pay attention. I will listen to you. I will know when you speak what the issues are. I'm not going to come to the table knowing I know everything. I will acknowledge when I don't know something, and I will ask the questions. And I would encourage you to look at my website, lizjohnwest.ca, look at my policies and make an informed decision about who you vote for Ward Métis. And if you have any questions, send me an email. If you're interested in getting involved in the campaign, please do send an email as well. And we can always use donations for our campaign. And so we'd really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I'd like to say a big thank you, Liz, for coming onto the show tonight. It's been a mishmash of different questions, and we can carry on till 8 o'clock, but I just wanted us to do this as a tester, and then down the line at some point over the summer we can meet up again and compare notes to see where you are with the campaign and see what more we can do to support you then. But I want to say thank you again for giving us your time this evening. There you have it, everybody. Stay tuned to Ladies Corner for more insightful interviews. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, T.